This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Welcome everybody. This is the Thoughtful Travellers Book Club, and today we are discussing A Beginner's Guide to Japan. But it's much more than A Beginner's Guide to Japan by Pico Iyer. So the subtitle is Observations and Provocations, and I think that's a better guide to what is in here than just A Beginner's Guide, because it's a fun and interesting book about Japan. So welcome, Justin, my lovely co-host in Canberra, and a very, very special welcome to Miyuki. Now, Miyuki is the host of the Japan Experts podcast. That's how I came across her, and I'm sure a lot of people watching today are interested in Japan. And so obviously you all should go and download some episodes of the Japan Experts podcast. It's fascinating. So well done. Actually, Miyuki, can you just tell us like one or two sentences about your podcast?
Sure. So my podcast is, as Amanda explained, my podcast is about Japanese culture. So it's actually like I interview bilingual Japan-based culture experts who are specialized in many different fields of Japan, and I interview them and they talk about lots of stories, often very in-depth, and yes.
Yeah, I love it because of exactly that reason. Every episode is a very specific niche topic, and that's one of the things I love so much about Japan is the culture is so vast and broad, and there's so many different kinds of areas you can dive down deep into. So congratulations. It's a really, you've brought that podcast together really well and find very interesting people to talk to.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming along today. You are currently, am I right? You said I was checking in the email, you're in Kyoto right now?
Yes, I am actually. I'm based in Tokyo, but I'm on a business trip. So I'm currently by the Japan Sea. The Kyoto prefecture has a sea side too. And yes, I'm facing the Japan Sea right now, actually.
That's so lovely. I love it when we have some other guests on. It's we've got both sides of Australia involved, but it's good to get other places on too. First of all, Justin and I thought we'd give our quick overview of what we thought of the book. So, Justin, do you want to tell us first what you thought of Pico Iyer's A Beginner's Guide to Japan?
Sure. Look, it's something I found really, really, really interesting. It's just like, because every chapter is a collection of what I would call some random and obscure things about Japan. And that's the kind of stuff I love to read about, because I don't want to hear about, normal stuff. I want to hear about the really good stuff that goes on in a country. Just like nobody wants to know about kangaroos in Australia, do they? So
I do.
So it's Japan. You do. But
I don't, but I get why other people do.
He just kind of picks things out, and some of it's to do with him living there. And I remember just phrases about in a metro station in Osaka or something he noticed, or just the various observations he's made. Plus he interchanges that with other things he's read and researched, and then he kind of puts them into a chapter with a kind of a loose-fitting, overarching kind of he just groups them together, and then you read them, and because each one's really small, you kind of go, oh, that's fascinating, and then the next one's like, yeah, that's okay. But overall, you just get. He's called it a beginner's guide, but I think, as you said, Amanda, the observations and provocations, I think, is the key words. He's just observed so many things in Japanese life as a non-Japanese person, and just randomly just kind of chuck them down together, and it really, for me, it really works. It just makes me want to go to Japan even a lot more than I already did. So,
yeah, exactly. Yes. No, I agree. I think it reminded me a little bit of last month's book, Mary Morris's All the Way to the Tigers, with all the different snippets of, and it's such an interesting style to read, isn't it? But and some of them are longer, and I must say I quite liked the slightly longer ones because I could feel I could get into a story more. But so he's lived in Japan for decades, I think. 32 years.
30-something years, I think.
Yeah, it says on the back, 32
yeah.
years. He's married to a Japanese woman. So he has like pretty in-depth experience of Japan, but I think perhaps you're always a foreigner if you are a foreigner in Japan, I guess, because the culture is so deep. It's so, unless you're born and grow up there, you can't really become Japanese. I
imagine there's stuff in the book that even someone born in Japan probably would never think too much about because it's not that unusual to them. And probably think as well that why would anyone find this interesting, or why would anyone? And yet when I read it, I'm like going, wow, that's so interesting. So,
yeah.
And as we just mentioned, kangaroos. Miyuki would absolutely love to see kangaroos, know everything about kangaroos, but I see them outside my kitchen window almost daily. So
yeah. Justin, you're kind of perpetuating a stereotype there. So the average Australian doesn't see kangaroos every day, but you happen to live where you do. True. So yeah,
yeah, I know.
But I take your point. Miyuki, I know you've only had a chance to have a quick look. What's your impression about this book from a Japanese perspective?
Yeah, I'm so far only the halfway through, so I don't know if I will still have this feeling after reading the whole book. But I just felt my first impression was that it was a bit over exaggeration included.
Interesting.
As you just talked about this kangaroo thing, it probably there's some sort of aspect when you talk about Japanese thing. But it's not always that things, right? Always. It's just probably some people may feel that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's that everyone has the same feeling. That's what I thought.
Oh, that makes absolute sense. I think that's a very measured view. So we've got a few.
I was just going to say, I think culture changes as well, doesn't it? So culture changes as well. So some of these things might be very, very common for younger or older Japanese people, but maybe completely different as the generations of Japanese have gone on, or particularly some things where the Japanese remember things in their history because they're old enough to, whereas the younger Japanese haven't. So that would affect the way the culture is to them as well. So
that's true too.
I think he mentioned the makeup, young ladies do their makeup in the trains, right? I don't see them do that anymore. I don't know if it's COVID related, but I think even just before the COVID, I don't think I come across these scenes anymore in Tokyo.
Maybe 20 years ago, they definitely did. I remember from 20 years ago when I lived in Osaka, that was definitely a common thing. But perhaps that's changed. Exactly. Yeah, things are always changing. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so for today, we've picked out a few of the topics that intrigued us the most, and we're so excited we can get a Japanese perspective on it. So for anyone watching, there's quite a few of you watching, you may not have finished or read the book, and it's okay because it's such a random kind of book and random discussion that we're just going to pick out some of the aspects that we were particularly curious about.
We can't spoil it.
No, it's not. There's no spoilers. So it's just it's an interesting read no matter what. So we're going to start with something quite fun, or totally fun, and it's the topic of mascots. On page 55 of the book, it said there were in 2016 92 mascots in Osaka Prefecture alone, including 2 dogs to represent tax departments and a caped flying hot water bottle. Now, my experience of Japan is that there are mascots for everything, and it seems to be quite an important part of Japanese life. And I've always liked this part of it. There's a thing where it's okay. You don't have to, I don't know how to say this correctly, but you don't have to grow up. For example, when I had a bank account in Japan, it had the Peanuts characters on my card and on my bank book. And nobody cared. It wasn't for kids. You're still, in Australia, people might think, oh, that's for kids. But it's actually kind of, you can enjoy whatever you enjoy at any age, is the feeling that I got. And I don't know if that's why mascots are bigger. I don't know. Miyuki, tell us something about this idea of mascots in Japan. Help.
I don't know. I don't personally love mascot that much. So I don't collect these, I don't know, like mascots or like dolls or anything like that. So I'm not too sure. But I don't know, maybe like these, I don't know, mascots or the image for the bank, for example, they probably like create some affinity to people. Don't you think? I don't know, what kind of like brand image do popular in Western world? I don't know.
I mean, not characters. Just, I mean, it's not as exciting as that. Like the tax office has, I don't know. Even does it have a logo, Justin? I can't even imagine.
But occasionally you get a company who will have an advertisement on TV and they'll be using an animal or a character or something like that. But it won't necessarily last that long. Like,
it's pretty unusual.
Yeah, like they might do a series of ads and they might go over a few years, but for that company, but then they'll get a new marketing people in and they'll change, but it's not, they don't really have mascots. Like sporting sides, they all have mascots. But outside of that, it's not really common. And even the logos for most of these things are, I would say they're boring in a lot of ways. We certainly don't, like I read the bit about having the nuclear industry and the self-defense force have mascots. Well, that wouldn't be something that we would have in Australia. It's just so, but I know why they do it. I think it's just to get a nice image out there and everyone looks at the cute mascot and it's a nice image. They go, oh, so, one day we might have mascots for our mining industry because, it's always trying to make more friends against
Donnie the Digger or something, who knows?
Yeah.
Yuki, there's a lot of is it connected to the love of anime and cartoons? I don't know. There's,
probably.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, but some people definitely like to collect these things. Like whenever they visit different regions or whenever they visit different areas, because every part of Japan have these like unique different things. But perhaps I just thought maybe because each region, each prefecture, like we have 47 prefectures and also we have like many different regions. I don't remember the number. But yeah, we have like so many distinct characters between these regions, between these prefectures. That's why they want to show their own characters. By creating their mascot, because this mascot usually shows the characteristics of the area. For example, I'm originally from the Gifu prefecture, which is in the central area of Japan, and they have a mascot called Minamon, if I remember his name correctly. And the Minamon is like stands for like she is related to the water, because the Gifu, it has like abundance water resource, and the water in Japanese mizu, and the minamon probably like mi is like same mizu for me. So
yeah, probably
I think some kind of like similarities. So I think each region wants to show off their characteristics. That's why they create these things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like the different regions and the different prefectures have a lot of, like, it seems when I lived in Japan, I could understand that every prefecture or region had some things that were very unique and it was important. For example, ice cream flavors. Like you would go to a new area and they would have a really weird ice cream flavor. But, like if I told my students, oh, I'm going to, X place on the weekend, they would say, oh, you must try the squid ink ice cream there, or whatever the special flavor was, and things like that, or different, omiyagi, like, souvenirs that you would bring back were very different. Whereas I guess in Australia, Justin, there's not that much. We don't, as our different states don't have any, really kind of big branding that you feel, oh, this is a New South Wales thing, or this is a WA thing. It's just a bit.
The worst I can think of is we have different names for things across the country. Like every now and then there'll be just one thing that has a different name in South Australia or Western Australia, or and we do have, I guess, I can't think of too many things. Like, sure, you get more seafood on the coast than you do inland, because once you go inland in Australia, you can get a long way from the ocean. There's things like that, but
it's not the same. Yeah.
wherever
And I
not
guess,
that.
so Japan
No,
has
no.
like this very rich, very long lasting, ongoing culture. Whereas in Australia, our long and rich heritage is our Indigenous heritage, which, we unfortunately don't know as much about. But,
No.
and I suppose if you think of, Justin, the map of Australia that's divided into the Indigenous countries, that's much more representative, that's much more similar
right.
perhaps. So
that probably would look like a Japanese prefecture.
yeah,
map.
exactly.
All these
Yeah.
prefectures and stuff.
And they would have much more
because we've got 8
strong cultures.
Yeah, because we've got 8 states or territories, and I imagine quite a few of them are almost as big as Japan themselves. So,
but not very populated.
So and they're bigger than so many countries in the world. Not populated as much, and just the sheer size of them, it means that we just don't have that. The diversity was in the Indigenous languages and the cultures, and a lot of them are lost.
Now, before I go on to our next question, sorry, I just want to say something very interesting. So Anna from Norway has mentioned here she loves Japan because she had a sweetheart from over there. And I'm like, I need to know this story. So Anna, I know because I've interviewed her, is Italian but lives in Norway.
Sounds like a podcast episode.
And I know, and she's never told me about her Japanese sweetheart. So now I need to know more. And and I was about to say, but Cindy's already done it. I was about to say to everyone watching, if you do have any questions, just type them in, because we have Miyuki here as a Japan expert to hopefully answer them.
If I could relate to your earlier thought on the anime and manga, probably we have like these cute characters because of we have like lots of like artists, anime like manga artists, so that they can create really cute ones. Because for example, I know that like US, California, they have a bear as a state in their state flag, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's on their flag as well.
But the bear is like much more, I don't know, like realistic look. It's not really
cute.
like a mascot or something. But in Japan, I think there are lots of people who can make these, like, I don't know, like create a cute character. That's why we have like probably that culture. That's
that makes sense. Yeah, it probably is all combined. Yeah, that's true. Okay, now I want to get to some of the extra thoughtful parts. Now I'm going to skip one, but on our list. But the next one is to talk about being a perfectionist. There's a part in the book. I'm really curious about your thoughts here, Miyuki. So there's a part in the book where he writes, perfection, in fact, is part of what makes Japan wonderfully welcoming to foreigners and unyieldingly inhospitable deep down. Now, my personal perspective on this is definitely that my students, so I was an English teacher for a couple of years in Japan, and my students were all perfectionists, and they really wanted to speak 100% correctly. I mean, later on I taught here, and I taught also, like, for example, Brazilian and Colombian, so South American students. And they were the opposite end of that. They didn't care. They had no perfectionist tendencies at all. They just wanted to talk a lot and throw bits of words in, which is also good. It kind of works. Whereas my Japanese students were very concerned about getting things right. So, I mean, that's part of it. But Miyuki, what else do you have to say about, so are Japanese people perfectionists? Tell us.
I think I was one of them, and I was very concerned about like being perfect, like speaking like very like perfect English. I still probably have that kind of like, I don't know, like the element inside me, but I'm kind of like getting used to it because my English isn't perfect. But because I create the podcast, so I kind of like get used to it because I thought it's more important to get the voice out rather than just like being perfect, because like human beings, we are never perfect, right? But definitely it's part of Japanese culture and everyone wants to speak perfect English.
What about in other situations, like in the workplace, for example? Like, do people always try to do everything perfectly, or is good enough near enough ever?
I don't know if it's related to what we are discussing here, but for example, like in the Japanese kind of organization, usually I think the standard process is that the younger junior staff create the first draft, and then the senior staff, maybe multiple senior staff, check the draft many times so that they can get things in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I think that is exactly related to this. I don't think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Go on, Justin.
Yeah. I don't think it's uncommon either, but I just think in Japan, I'm fairly senior in my job and I'd get someone to check it, but they'd probably take 15 minutes to read a 20-page document and then hand it back to me. Whereas imagine in Japan, a 20-page document doesn't take 15 minutes by one person to review. Like they'd put more effort into reviewing, whereas we just check things and go, right, that's good enough, and we got a deadline to make, and that's more important.
Yeah. For example, we have stickers. Is it hanko? Like it's stamp? Is it stickers?
Yeah.
A stamp. Like so stamp. Your signature stamp, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, signature stamp. And like if it's a governmental organization, like usually, I don't know, like at least 5 or 6 people has to check it.
Wow.
And there's space left for like each manager, like director, and above that, and everyone needs to review it.
Interesting.
That is still the process.
I did read in the book that in Japan, like they still have a lot. It was something to do with the number of engineers and technical people compared to the number of managers. In Japan, they still have a lot of these technical people doing stuff, whereas in America, they've got lots and lots more managers and very few. And they said it was like something like 40 times more managers in America compared to engineers than it was in Japan. And I just know from the things I like, cameras and photography, like Japan makes most of the cameras in the world. I know how when you're waiting for a camera to release, like it would be almost unheard of in the Western world for them to say, hey, we're going to release this on this date, and for them to change the date. Whereas Japan, if the camera wasn't perfect and ready, they'll just push back the date. They'll just say, sorry, this camera's not ready to be released. And then 3 or 6 months later, they would release a camera and then it would be perfect. That's just from an outsider looking at that process.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. I think it's good. I'm an engineer, and I think sometimes things do get rushed in the Western world just because to meet a deadline or what the marketing department has already said.
It's very interesting. I guess the short answer is yes, Japanese are perfectionists. As
more than
rule.
The rest of us anyway.
Compared to other nations. And like you said, Justin, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, that's actually a really good thing. Okay, now I have another topic here about religion in Japan. So there was a quote in the book, and I found this really fascinating when I lived in Japan as well. So the quote in the book said, 1 in 4 Japanese answered yes to the question, do you believe in any religion? So that was 1 in 4. But more than 96% admitted to participating in religious rites of some kind. So my understanding from when I lived there is that there's a lot of Shinto influence, a lot of Buddhist influence, and some Christian. And I know my students used to tell me that they would do some Buddhist things and they would do some Shinto things, and it seemed to me more like just rituals that they did rather than a religious rule that they followed. Like they would go and get their car blessed when they got a new car at now I can't remember, a Shinto shrine. I'm not sure.
I do remember reading that though. Yeah, it was. I do remember reading about getting the car blessed or something. There was something in the book about it, I think, was it?
Yeah, those kind
I've
of
heard
things.
it somewhere else.
So anyway, tell us, Miyuki, a bit more about religion in Japan. I mean, just in a few minutes or less. It's a big topic, but is what Pico Iyer writes in the book kind of right?
So I think this book also mentioned in this way too. So the religion in Japan, especially Shinto, I think it's more the cultural activities. So it's more the practice rather than belief, rather than believing it. So I've actually never thought this way before I interviewed Shinto related expert for my podcast. And although he is originally from the UK, he is now the Japanese citizen, and he priestly told me that believing it is not so important, but doing things in a way that's supposed to be is very important. And that's the Shinto priest care about.
Wow.
They don't even care about what the people actually believe, but they really care about how the people pay respect to deities at shrines. So we have to follow a set of standards in front of the Shinto shrines, and that is the most important thing. And I've never thought about like this custom that way, but I think I kind of like agree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I kind of like, probably, I can agree with his view. And also like Shinto is that thing, but the Buddhism is more, I think still it's part of the cultural activities because, for example, like Buddhist funerals is probably the most standard in Japan. And I think part of, I don't know, it's more the like daily like life process, I think. But in Buddhism, I actually interviewed a Buddhist priest also recently. And I think the belief, like the believing we have like the Buddha, but we have like this kind of like the what's important in Buddhism is probably the things more emphasized than the Shinto. So Shinto is more the cultural activities, but the Buddhism is more, I think, towards the religion.
Right.
For my understanding.
Yeah. 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 Oh, no, that's fascinating. Oh, it sort of concurs with what my experiences are as well. So
yeah, I think a lot of the world. I think I've come across a lot of countries, and it seems to be the number of people who are really following a religion really strictly is sort of less, but a lot of people still have the practices that they learned from because they've been passed down. So the one thing I can think of in Australia that's very common, and I know lots of people who are not religious but they still do it, is on Good Friday before Easter they only eat fish.
true.
And yet they will have not been to a church for years. So, but they'll still do that. So, you know,
that's
and we
true,
still
you're
celebrate
right. Good
Christmas.
example.
We celebrate Christmas, but many people all around the world will celebrate Christmas and they'll do their own thing, but they're not necessarily religious. And the same with Easter. They're not.
Yeah.
But Japan
the eating
maybe
fish on
just
Good Friday is a good example of something we can follow. Yeah.
But I think probably I don't know. It's quite a diverse and complex subject. So,
isn't it just? We've got one. I've got a few questions that I need to share, but one of them is connected to religion, so I'll start with that, even though it's the most recent. So, Cindy asked, "Do you think religion in Japan is related to superstition?"
I think in a way, yes, because Shinto originated from the kind of animism culture, which is like in which we respect everything in nature, like stones, water, like waterfall, these sort of things. So definitely, I think it has that character.
Interesting. Okay, now I'm going to go completely to new topics just because we've got a couple of interesting questions here. So Nicole asks, are there any particular countries that Japanese people are fascinated with? Like, are there particular popular culture references that inspire people to travel to particular places, or where are Japanese people particularly curious about?
I think one destination popped up in my mind is Hawaii. Japanese people love visiting Hawaii.
I think that's true. I've heard the same. Why is that? A lot of Japanese people have migrated to Hawaii, right? Like, there's a significant Japanese population there. So how did that come about? Why do you guys love Hawaii?
I don't know, but we probably have maybe Hawaii Tourism Bureau
did a really good job.
Too much promotional activities, that's why, but
I mean, I guess it's probably not too far. It's probably not too far from Japan either.
That's true.
Flight-wise, it's probably not a long flight. I don't know how far it would be, but it's only going to be a few hours, whereas other places are much further away. So
I've personally never been to Hawaii. I think it's about 10 hours flight. But I think one reason I can think of is that most Japanese, I don't know if I could say most, but some Japanese speak really good English, but many Japanese are afraid of speaking English. And Hawaii is a few destination that the Japanese people can get away without speaking English, right? Because there
There's so
are
many
lots of
Japanese
stuff.
there that it's possible.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
And I've come across this when I've come, like I'll be in somewhere in Australia and there'll be a Japanese tour group or just a group of Japanese, and they'll ask a question, but what will happen is someone will come and get my attention, and then they'll go find the person in their group who they think can speak the best English to come and talk to me and ask the question. and then they speak really good English, but they all know, you can tell they all understand what I'm saying because
Yes. It's their perfectionist tendencies, as referenced earlier.
So, but they'll mostly be asking for directions to somewhere and things like that. And but
that's true.
That's okay. I just find it interesting.
And also just a reason is that just a reason I can think of is that the Hawaii is famous for really good pancakes, right?
Oh, okay.
That's a good enough reason.
And Japanese girls are in love with pancakes.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, you're right. And maybe that's the reason.
I just add to this. I was traveling in Peru, and at some stage in the history of Peru, in like the last 50 years, large numbers of Japanese people had moved to Peru, and their president was actually of Japanese descent.
Oh, yeah.
At one stage. And then when I was there, his daughter was running for president, and yet they had all these Japanese restaurants and stuff all around town, everything like that, but nowhere else in South America. It was just seemed to be Peru, and I don't understand why that happened or anything like that. But it's just a very interesting thing that's happened, that this community of Japanese people had moved to Peru.
Yeah, there's a significant Japanese origin, or people of Japanese origin in Brazil as well. I used to have quite a lot of Brazilian Japanese students when I was teaching. But sort of not a very universal. There's kind of pockets. Back to Hawaii. To practice my Japanese, I used to watch the Terrace House series. You know, it's reality. I never watch reality TV, but because it was Japanese, I did watch the Terrace House series, and they had a whole series that they set in Hawaii, where they lived in Hawaii for months, and I learned from there that they could go to lots of restaurants and shops, and everyone would just speak Japanese, and it's really, really prevalent there. So it makes sense that however it started, it makes sense that now people really love to go to Hawaii. So
it's not an uncommon thing. I don't think. I think people, even English-speaking people, like to go to English-speaking countries. or
like people go to Bali and they know that lots of people there will speak English because so many English-speaking people go there and stuff like that. So it's interesting. Hey, now there's one more question from Anna, and she would like to ask about the geisha culture.
I'm not quite too sure. I'm
not a geisha expert.
I'm not too familiar with the geisha culture, because what I know is that the famous word I could think of, famous expression that I could think of is ichigen-san okotowari, which means you always need to go with somebody who have been to the geisha house. So first time business, probably I think it's probably different story if you're a tourist, because there are some different sort of like experience type of things you can try. But I think usually if it's a proper geisha house, if you want to visit, I think if you are first time business, you are not allowed.
Ah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting.
So
and I always get the impression it's very secretive as well, or not secretive, but it's
because I think traditionally the guests don't pay a bill each time, but it's like they charge the bill. So like probably at the end of the year, or maybe like at the end of the quarter, I'm not too sure. Like collectively, like these payment will be transferred to. I think the geisha house, I think the food will be delivered to this geisha house. They don't serve the food, but the guest will make a payment, and then the geisha house will make a payment for the food. And I think like each time they don't pay the bill, but it's a bit complicated.
Yeah. I think it is a very complicated area. So yes, but thank you.
Sorry, that was my best effort. I need to go and visit.
That's right.
One last topic is a fun topic again that Justin brought up, and it's about vending machines. So here we know that vending machines are special in Japan and present in a way that we can't imagine. So Justin, you told me the book mentions, I couldn't find the exact thing, but it says 5.6 million vending machines, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And I always remember I climbed Fujisan. I climbed Mount Fuji when I lived in Japan, and I got to the top of Mount Fuji, and there were vending machines at the top of Mount Fuji, which surprised me because like it's quite difficult to walk up Mount Fuji, but somehow the vending machines got there.
Every single person I know who's been to Japan tells me about a vending machine they've discovered and what you can get out of a vending machine in Japan. Like I believe hot meals, like you can get
hot cans of soup
ramen out of a vending machine.
Yeah. When I lived in Japan, I lived opposite a supermarket car park, and they had a bank of vending machines.
And I've heard there are shops that are just vending machines.
It was magic. Yeah. Actually, I wish I'd thought of finding it, but I don't know where it is. Last time I was in Japan with my son, we found a vending machine that sold. Sorry, it's so silly. It sold caps for your cat and they look like vegetables. So we have an eggplant cap for a cat and an onion cap for a cat that came out of a vending machine. But I couldn't find that here. Miyuki, tell us a bit more about Japanese vending machines.
So I think it's definitely true that in the really like rural areas, I think it's a regional areas, you may come across not many, but some vending machines that sell the udon noodles, for example, or the bento, like the bento.
Yep.
The
box meal.
Box.
The box.
Yep. Looking beautiful with lots of different foods. Oh, so good.
Yes. The vending machine bento might not be that good, but
do you know what? I bet it is though. Like it might not be as good as one you get elsewhere, but like in Japan, I've never had bad quality food in any circumstance, you know? Like even in the convenience stores, everything tastes amazing. Like it's, you guys just don't do bad quality stuff, I think.
I'll go to Japan and I'll judge all of this for myself. That's the only way I can.
You'll have to go, Justin. I know you don't need any convincing, but
No.
So, have you used a vending machine this week, Miyuki?
This week? No.
Oh. I thought you were proper Japanese.
Because in cities, it's just like usual vending machines, not really the unique ones.
True. Yeah. Okay. I forgive you.
Yeah, but the usual ones in Japan are probably unique for me.
Is there? We have a cold drinks and hot drinks. So in winter, we have more the hot drink selection.
Yes, I remember in the hot drinks vending machine there was a soup, like a corn kind of soup.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Yeah, that was a great like quick snack in the middle of winter if you found one of those. Yeah. So.
And we have ice cream vending machines also.
Oh yes, exactly. Oh. Yeah, which is impressive, and they stay frozen. There's everything. Oh, now I'm getting homesick for Japan.
I've never been there. I have to go. I want to go tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait. One day we'll have a thoughtful travellers trip there, Justin. We'll all meet up there.
Yes.
And Miyuki can show us around.
Great.
Yes, I will. I'm happy to.
I have only spent a very short amount of time in Tokyo, so I need a local to show me. It feels
it's almost a country
in
itself, Tokyo, I think.
Yeah.
It's such a big city. I think it's almost like you could go there for 2 weeks and feel like you barely scratched the surface.
I went to Osaka for 2 years and still needed more time. So, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Cindy made a lovely comment. Cindy said, the US has drive-through for everything. Japan has a vending machine for everything. Australia has as she thought about it, maybe drive through bottle shops. I think that's about the
and that would be another book club if we read an Australian book, because we have some things that the rest of the world go.
This is true. We do.
You do
we
that?
Do.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Justin, do you have any last questions for Miyuki before we finish up?
Oh no. But thank you very much, Miyuki, for Well, I do, but not.
Yes, but not that will take only a minute or two. Sorry. I know.
So,
Miyuki, do you have something last to tell us about Japan?
So Japan is an amazing country, so please visit soon.
Hopefully soon. Miyuki, thank you so much. It's been absolutely wonderful to have someone with a proper Japanese perspective on our thoughts here, rather than Justin and I just having a good guess. So thank you so much for joining us. And it's been
I would have been guessing for me.
I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll have to chat again soon for the podcast, I think. So, yeah.
I look forward to listening to your podcast as well.
Please,
everyone go and listen to Japan Experts, because it's really, really interesting. As thoughtful travellers, we always like to learn a lot about a place before we go, so it's a perfect podcast for it. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.